When my best friend Jessica knocked on my door that rainy Thursday night, mascara running and suitcase in hand, I didn't hesitate. I opened my arms and let her cry into my shoulder. Like I had so many times before, we'd been through everything. Together, college heartbreaks, late-night pizza binges, job losses, bad haircuts. She was the closest thing I had to a sister. So when she sobbed, "I'm going to lose my apartment, Claire, I have nowhere to go," I didn't think twice. I made us tea while she curled up on my couch under the throw blanket I'd gotten from Target on sale. Her eyes were swollen, cheeks blotchy. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Between hiccup sobs, she explained that her landlord had given her 30 days notice. She'd fallen behind on rent after quitting her job to pursue freelance. Writing full-time, the client checks were late, and her savings were gone, $80,000. She whispered, "That's what I need, otherwise I'll be out on the street." The number stunned me. I didn't say anything for a while. Jessica gripped my hand like it was the last branch keeping her from falling off a cliff. I had the money I'd been saving for a down payment on a house of my own, but I'd never lent anyone anything close to that amount. Still, I remembered all the times she'd been there for me. When my mom died, when my ex-fiancé cheated, when I didn't know how to keep going, she never hesitated. "Let me help," I finally said. Her eyes lit up with gratitude and disbelief. "Claire, are you sure?" I nodded. "Just promise me one thing, use it to stay afloat. Get your apartment sorted. Get back on your feet." She swore up and down she would. We drafted a simple agreement, nothing fancy, just a handwritten "I owe you" with both our signatures. I told myself it wasn't about the money. It was about keeping someone I loved from drowning. That night, she slept soundly in my guest room. I stayed up watching the ceiling fan spin slowly, listening to the rain tap against the windows, wondering if I'd done the right thing. But when I peeked into her room and saw her curled up peacefully, I felt a strange sense of calm. Over the next few days, she stayed at my place, helping with dishes, bringing flowers, even cooking breakfast one morning. We laughed over pancakes like old times. She said she found a sublet and would be moving out soon. I offered to help her pack. She declined gently. "You've done enough." A week after she moved out, her text slowed. I assumed she was settling in. But 2 weeks later, she'd gone completely silent, no responses, no updates. Then one morning, scrolling through Instagram while sipping coffee, I froze. There she was, standing on a white sand beach in Bali, bright blue sky, arms around a man I'd only seen once before. A caption, "Honeymoon bliss with my forever." My heart dropped. The days after writing that check felt like a blur of relief and exhaustion. I'd done something big, maybe too big, but I told myself it was worth it. I imagined Haley in her apartment, lighting a candle, sitting on her old beige couch and exhaling like she hadn't in weeks. That image made the anxiety worth it. She texted me later that night. "I still can't believe you did that. I owe you everything, Jenna." I responded with a simple heart. I didn't need effusive thanks. Just knowing I saved my best friend from losing her home was enough. That was what friendship meant, right? The weeks passed. Haley wasn't texting as often, but I figured she was just busy. Maybe decompressing after the storm. We weren't in constant touch before the eviction panic either. Life was resuming, and I was happy to step back into the quiet. But then came the stories. First, a mutual friend mentioned that Haley had posted an Instagram story from the airport. "Wait, I thought she was broke," Natalie said with a casual laugh. I frowned. Maybe she's just taking a break after everything. She probably needs it. I dismissed it. I wanted to dismiss it, but curiosity got the best of me. I opened Haley's profile. Her account was public, and suddenly, a world I wasn't invited to unfolded in front of me. Haley on a hammock. Captioned, "Finally breathing again." Haley holding a pina colada, tagging a luxury Bali resort. Haley in a white sundress, kissing a man I recognized from her stories. Mason, the on-again off-again guy she once swore she was done with. I blinked at the photo. Was that an engagement ring? I zoomed in. Yes, oval cut, rose gold band, a hand cradling hers. Mason's. I scrolled faster now, a silent panic rising like heat through my spine. Another story, Haley laughing, her caption, "Never been this happy." And then a video. The two of them on a boat, wind in their hair, sun painting their faces. The comments were flooded with congratulations. "Oh my god, you two? Finally, so happy for you. Girl. Bali suits you. Honeymoon vibes." I froze. Honeymoon, my heart thudded against my ribs. No, there had to be some mistake. Had I misunderstood something? Did Mason have money? Was this a surprise trip? Maybe she got a promotion? Maybe my phone buzzed. A notification. Haley posted a new reel. From eviction notices to forever promises. I watched it. Slowly. Clips of her crying at her apartment door. I recognized it from when she sent me a selfie the day she said she was packing. Then images of her and Mason at the beach, the ocean, the ring. The villa. I dropped the phone on the table and stared at the ceiling. Nausea curling in my stomach like sour milk. That $80,000 wasn't a loan. It was a ticket. A ticket for them, for her freedom, for her fantasy, for her fresh start. I was just the ATM she pressed when her dream got too expensive. I didn't cry. Not right away. I sat on my couch, the same one Haley had cried on just weeks ago, and stared at my phone. Like it might explain itself. Maybe the reel was old footage. Maybe the ring was costume jewelry. Maybe no. I couldn't keep spinning these fairy tales to protect myself from the truth. She lied to me. Not just a white lie or a stretched truth. This was betrayal, calculated and rehearsed. She knew exactly what she was doing when she folded her trembling hands around that mug of tea, eyes wet with fear, and said, "Jenna, I have no one else." She did. She had Mason. She had Bolly. She had a ring and a plan. She just didn't have the money until I gave it to her. I picked up my phone, fingers shaking as I opened our text thread. The last message from her had been 2 weeks ago. "Bolly has always been my dream. Someday we'll go together." Someday. Apparently, someday meant once you pay for my lies. I typed, "Haley, we need to talk. Urgently. Read." No reply. 3 hours later, I sent another. "I saw the photos. Please don't make me ask. Just tell me the truth." Left on read. The pit in my stomach deepened. This wasn't avoidance. It was silence, intentional. Cruel silence. She wasn't even scrambling to cover her tracks, because in her mind, she didn't owe me anything anymore. That's what hurt the most. I scrolled through old messages, back to the day she begged me for help. "If I get evicted, I'll lose everything, my safety, my sanity, my home." I know it's a lot to ask, Jenna. I hate even asking. But I promise I'll pay every cent back, every cent. I remember the way her voice cracked when she said that. How she clutched my hand like I was her last lifeline. I remembered the feeling in my chest, pride, almost, that I could step in, that I could save someone I loved. Now, that same chest felt hollow. I opened my bank app and stared at the transaction. $80,000. Haley M. No memo. No written agreement, just blind faith. What a fool I was. I spent the rest of the night pacing. Calling her went straight to voicemail. Her Instagram stories were still rolling. A spa day. A flower bath matching silk robes. Each frame was a knife. I called Natalie. Voice shaking. She used the money for a honeymoon. I whispered, "What?" Natalie gasped. "Wait. What?" I thought she never paid rent. She never faced eviction. She lied to me, to everyone. I funded their dream vacation. I thought I was saving her from the streets, not sending her to a 5-star resort. Silence. Then Natalie said, "You have to confront her. Publicly, if you have to. This is theft." I swallowed. It's worse. It's betrayal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking back to all the times I defended her. When friends questioned her stories. When my boyfriend, Ethan, raised an eyebrow about the loan. $80,000 with no contract. He'd said, "Jen, that's dangerous." I called it loyalty, compassion, friendship. But now, I couldn't even find those words in my throat. I opened Haley's latest story again. She was laughing, carelessly beautiful. Wind tussling her hair as she leaned into Mason's arms. Caption, "Worth everything it took to get here." She was right. It took me. The next morning, I stood in front of my mirror, brushing through knots I hadn't noticed the night before. My eyes were swollen, skin dull. I looked like someone who'd been robbed not of money, but of trust, of belief and good intentions. I was Jenna, the reliable one, the giver, the helper. But now, I wasn't sure who I was. Haley still hadn't responded, not even to let me explain, not even a lie. Just cold, arrogant silence. And her stories were still rolling in. Like she decided I wasn't even worth the courtesy of a blocked view. I took a screenshot of the transaction, then the reel, then the post of her in front of a waterfall, the diamond glinting on her hand, Mason in matching linen beside her. I texted her one more time. "Last chance. Tell me the truth, or I will." This time she replied, "Haley, don't be dramatic. You gave me the money. It's not my fault you assumed. What? That she wasn't manipulating me." David walked in from the shower, towel slung around his shoulders. He saw my face. "What happened?" I turned the phone toward him. He read the post silently, then shrugged. She gave it back. In her own twisted way. A few days later, I found a package outside her door. No note. No return label. Just a dress, carefully wrapped. Surprisingly clean. I unzipped the garment bag and stared at it. The same beading. The same neckline. The same hem I'd imagined walking down the aisle. And yet, it felt like a stranger. It had lived a life I hadn't been part of. I hung it in the back of our closet. Not out of anger, but because some ghosts belong in the dark. New Year's Eve arrived. and David planned something simple: dinner, board games, and a toast with cheap champagne. But as midnight neared, he turned serious. "I want us to make a resolution," he said. "Okay." I smiled, amused. "No more family drama?" He chuckled. "Well, that too. But more than that. I want us to live on our terms. No more letting people steal moments. No more giving up pieces of yourself to keep others comfortable." I felt my eyes stinged because he got it, all of it. He leaned in and whispered, "This year, Claire, I want you to take up space." I nodded. And I meant it. Spring arrived with pink skies and new beginnings. I found out I was pregnant on a rainy Wednesday in March. I sat in the bathroom for an hour, holding the test in shaking hands, whispering the word wow like it was magic. When I told David, he lifted me off the ground and spun me like we were the only two people who existed. We both cried, not because we were scared, but because this, finally, was ours, not borrowed, not overshadowed. Ours. I didn't tell Jessica. I didn't feel the need to. Not out of spite, but out of peace. When you stop expecting people to show up the way you want, you start appreciating the people who already do. One afternoon, while organizing the nursery, I opened the closet to grab a box, and there it was. The dress, still untouched. I pulled it out and held it against me, standing in front of the mirror. It didn't feel like a costume anymore. It felt like a memory that had finished breathing. I called David into the room. "What do you think?" I asked, half smiling. He looked me up and down. "Beautiful," he said. "But I think we should turn it into something new." I blinked. "Like what?" He walked over, took my hands in his, and whispered, "A baptism gown. For the baby." I stared at him, heart swelling. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. Because that's what healing looks like sometimes. Cutting up old pain and stitching it into new love. We didn't touch the dress again for a while. It stayed draped across the back of the rocking chair in the nursery. Not as a decoration, not as a statement, but as a quiet reminder that stories can evolve, even the painful ones. One morning, I found David standing in front of it, staring like it held a secret. "You still think we should cut it?" I asked gently, wrapping my arms around him from behind. He turned, his eyes soft. "Only if you're ready, only if it's what you want." I paused, then nodded. "I think I want this dress to finally do something good." We found a seamstress named Linda. She was retired but still took on projects with heart, as she put it. When I brought her the dress, she ran her fingers over the fabric like she was reading it in Braille. "It's been worn once," she said knowingly. "But not by you." I shook my head. "No. But I like my daughter to wear part of it. I want her to start her life wrapped in something that once held my hopes." Linda smiled. "Warm and maternal, that's the kind of heirloom worth keeping." It took her a few weeks, and when she called us to pick it up, I was almost too nervous to go. But the second she lifted the tissue paper, I gasped. The gown was simple, soft ivory lace, short sleeves, tiny satin buttons, elegant, timeless, sacred. She'd even embroidered a small message inside the hem: "From what was taken, something given." I pressed the fabric to my lips, overcome. It was like a benediction, not just for the child we were about to welcome, but for the version of me that had survived betrayal and come out kinder. As the due date neared, my world slowed. I moved through days like I was floating, swollen, exhausted, emotional at the smallest things. David took care of everything. He read baby books out loud in bed. He installed the car seat 3 times just to be sure. He kissed my belly every morning and every night like it was a ritual. Sometimes I catch him crying for no reason while folding baby clothes. "I just can't believe you get this," he'd say, and I'd nod, holding him close, whispering, "Me neither." Then one quiet Sunday, it happened early. Labor at dawn. A blur of contractions and hospital lights. 12 hours that felt like forever and no time at all. And finally, our daughter, small, loud, pink and perfect. We named her Evelyn Rose. I held her to my chest and sobbed, not because I was in pain, but because I'd never known a moment so full. Every ounce of loss, of grief, of bitterness. It dissolved in that instant. Nothing Jessica did or said could take this from me. This was mine. The next day, we dressed Evelyn in the tiny gown. She looked like a cherub, soft cheeks, button nose, fists curled against the lace. David took a photo. Then another. Then he leaned down and whispered, "Your mom's stronger than anyone I know." I smiled through tears, brushing my daughter's hair. Not long after, I posted a single picture online. No captions, no tags, just the image. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't a statement. It was release. That night, I got a message from Jessica. "She's beautiful." It read, "I see her wearing it. You look happy." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything at all, not out of anger, but because some conversations don't need replies, just closure. I looked over at David, sleeping, with Evelyn on his chest. The dress hung quietly by the window, and for the first time since the story began, I felt like I had truly found my own moment. The days after bringing Evelyn home were a haze of diapers, sleepless nights, and wonder. David and I found a rhythm unpolished but tender. He hummed lullabies he barely knew, while I whispered stories into her tiny ears as if she'd remember them someday. My body ached, my mind raced. But my heart was finally quiet. In those weeks, the world narrowed. It was just us, a family of 3. No calls from Jessica, no apologies. No explanation for the Instagram post, the betrayal, or the cruel remark. I had unfollowed her, deleted our childhood albums from my phone. But grief isn't just a file you can erase. It lingers in muscle memory and late night thoughts. Still, I was healing, and in that space of quiet, I made a decision I hadn't expected. I wrote Jessica a letter, not to fix anything, not to reopen wounds, but because I needed to reclaim my narrative, not let it rot under silence. I didn't start with anger. I started with love. I remember the time you split your lip falling off your bike and I carried you 3 blocks home. I remember the way we used to play bride and bridesmaid in the backyard, and how you always wanted to wear the veil. I let you every time. Then came the hard part. I offered you my dress because I thought we were still those girls, still that kind of bond. I didn't expect gratitude, but I never imagined cruelty. And finally, you told me to find my own moment. I did, and it was better than I ever dreamed because it wasn't about the aisle or the dress. It was about everything that came after. I didn't mail it, but I folded it carefully and tucked it into Evelyn's memory box, a story for someday. Fall crept in like an exhale. The leaves turned the color of fire, the air grew crisp, and Evelyn outgrew her newborn onesies. We took long walks, her bundled in the stroller, David always beside us. At the park one afternoon, I saw a little girl twirling in a princess dress. Her mom clapped as she spun, laughing and stumbling, arms wide like wings. David leaned over. You okay? I didn't answer at first. Just watched the girl spin, wild and unafraid. Then I nodded. Double quotes. Yeah, I think I am. Weeks later, an invitation arrived. It was a bridal shower for Jessica. Elegant calligraphy, cream envelope, no return address. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't the event itself that stung. It was a quiet assumption that I would come, that I had moved on, that after everything, I'd smile and sip champagne under paper lanterns and pretend we were still sisters. David saw the envelope on the counter. He raised an eyebrow. You don't have to, he said gently. I know, I whispered, but maybe I want to. We went, not because I forgave her, or because I wanted closure tied in a bow, but because I was no longer afraid of seeing her. The shower was held at a vineyard, white chairs, gold balloons, smiling strangers. Jessica wore blush pink and a crown of fresh flowers. She looked beautiful, tired, maybe nervous. When she saw me, her eyes widened. I half expected her to turn away, but she didn't. She walked toward me, and for the first time in over a year, she said something real. You look like a mom. I smiled just a little. I am. That night, we didn't talk about the dress or the post or the silence that followed. We talked about Evelyn, about how motherhood changes everything, about how sisters sometimes forget how to be sisters. It wasn't an apology, but it was something later. I left without saying goodbye, not out of spite but because I didn't need the last word anymore. Jessica could keep her aisle. I had already walked through something far harder and come out the other side. Time does what it does best, moves forward. The holidays arrived with quiet snow and the smell of cinnamon. Evelyn took her first steps between our couch and David's arms, laughing with the wild joy only babies can master. Jessica sent a Christmas card, a photo of her in Markin matching flannel pajamas, holding a sign, coming June 12th, baby girl. I stared at the card for a while, not angry, not bitter, just processing. Life had moved on, hers, mine, all of it unfolding on separate tracks. I placed a card on the fridge beside Evelyn's crooked crayon art and a photo of us at the zoo. A quiet, adult truce. Then came June. Jessica gave birth to her daughter Sloane. She didn't tell me directly. I found out from a mutual friend's Facebook post. Captioned, Welcome baby Sloane, 6 pounds 9 ounces of pure magic. There were hospital photos, Jessica in a pale blue robe, holding her daughter like she was holding the moon. I stared at that image longer than I should have. I remembered my own moment. The sweat, the ache, the miracle. Something shifted in me, a decision. Not made out of obligation or guilt but something softer. I bought a gift, a tiny, hand-knit blanket and a pair of white booties, wrapped in tissue and sealed with a note. For Sloane, from Evelyn's mom. May you grow strong, kind and brave. No signature. No explanation. Just love, detached from all the wreckage that had come before. I dropped it at their door one early morning, hoping no one would answer. They didn't. A week later, A photo appeared in Jessica's Instagram story, Sloane swaddled in the blanket I had chosen. No tag. No mention, just there, and somehow, that was enough. Evelyn turned one. We threw her a small party in the backyard. String lights, a messy smash cake, David on grill duty, a few close friends and my mom. Jessica wasn't invited, not because I was angry but because she hadn't earned that space yet. Healing doesn't always include reunion. Sometimes it's about protecting what you've rebuilt. Evelyn wobbled through grass, icing on her cheeks, clapping at nothing. And I realized this was my aisle, this was my moment. No dress, no walk. Just a life I had sewn together, thread by painful thread. One night, weeks later, I received a text from Jessica. Do you ever think we'll be close again? I stared at her for a long time. Once, I would have replied right away. Once, I would have twisted myself into 1,000 shapes to fix what she broke. But now I didn't need the answer right away. Instead, I typed slowly. I think we'll figure out what close looks like now. It won't be what it was, but maybe that's okay. She didn't reply, but I saw she'd read it. And for the first time, I didn't wait for more. There's an odd kind of peace in accepting someone's limitations, in knowing they can't love you the way you want, but maybe, sometimes, in their own broken way, they try. That doesn't mean you forget. It doesn't mean you hand them your heart again wrapped in tissue, but it does mean you stop bleeding for them. You stand still. You breathe. You build. A year after the wedding dress fiasco, I visited the attic. The box was still there, wrapped in plastic, sealed with care. I sat on the wooden floor, pulled it open, and ran my fingers over the lace. It still felt soft, still felt like mine, and in that moment, I realized something. Jessica may have worn it first, but that dress never saw love the way it did on the day Evelyn came home. That dress saw me become more than a bride. It saw me become a mother. And that was the moment I'd always been meant. For 1 year and 9 days after my sister's wedding, I stood before the full-length mirror in my bedroom, not in a gown, not holding flowers. Just holding Evelyn in my arms, her cheek against my collarbone, her little breaths warm against my skin. David came up behind me, rested his chin on my shoulder. She looks like you, he whispered. I smiled. God help her. I teased. But the truth was I had learned to love that reflection again, even without the veil, without the aisle, even with the scars of betrayal still faintly visible. Jessica reached out in early fall. She sent a photo of Sloane, wearing the booties I had given her. In just one sentence. Thank you for still showing up. It was the first real apology I'd ever received from her. No excuses, no deflection, just gratitude. I didn't reply for 3 days, not out of cruelty, but out of care. I wanted to be sure. And when I did write back, I kept it simple for them. We try. One step at a time. We didn't talk every day. We weren't magically close again. But the ice had cracked. And beneath it, something warm tried to grow. We saw each other again that Thanksgiving. A quiet gathering at my mom's house. The stuffing was too dry. The kids were too loud. But there was laughter. Jessica stood beside me in the kitchen, drying dishes. She looked down, then said, I still have the dress, you know. I nodded. I figured. She hesitated. If Evelyn ever wants it. I looked over at her and something in her eyes had changed. Not erased the past, not healed all the wounds, but softened. She'll choose her own, I said gently. But thank you. Time doesn't erase betrayal. It doesn't delete Instagram posts or soften the sting of 1,000 tiny cuts. But it does create distance, and sometimes in that distance we find space to breathe again. To remember who we were before the hurt. To see who we've become after it. My wedding dress stayed in the attic. I didn't burn it. I didn't bury it in resentment, because it no longer haunted me. It had become just fabric. And I was finally free from the story it used to tell. A few weeks later, I watched Evelyn twirl in a thrifted Halloween costume she insisted was a princess. Astronaut unicorn. She was laughing, arms wide, hair wild. Jessica sent a video of Sloane trying to say pumpkin, and instead shouting pupcake. And in that moment, I realized, maybe this was a redemption arc. Not a reunion wrapped in roses. But to women, broken and healing, raising daughters who might never hurt each other the way we did, that hope, that future was worth every stitch of pain. So yes, Jessica wore my wedding dress first. Yes, she stole something I can never get back, but she didn't steal my joy. She didn't take away my worth. I found my moment, and it was never about the dress. It was about standing in the wreckage, holding my daughter, and knowing I built something better than a perfect wedding. I built a life no one could take from me.